they stopped and gave it the full Signium Crucis.
Whoa.
They crossed themselves.
No way.
Yes. And you know, like, it stopped me in my tracks.
Britain. An ancient kingdom with legends of violence, cruelty, and torment in its blood. Join your hosts, Ross, John, and James, as they bravely tread where few would dare. Witness their journey into the horrific history of British horror. They are the General Witchfinders.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, ghouls and goblins, wherever you may be. Welcome to the first, some say inaugural, General Witchfinders podcast. We are your hosts. My name's James, and I'm talking to you from Bournemouth in England.
John?
Are you pointing at me? Yeah, I'm John, and I'm in Pontypridd in South Wales.
I'm Ross. I'm in Dorchester in South England. John, you sound very posh there. Sound like you got your telephone voice on.
Yeah, I'm doing what my nan used to do when she'd answer the phone. 515192.
Foot in the grave, Victor Belgium's 4291, which was his phone number.
And I was thinking of, what's the number for All Creatures Great and Small? Farah something?
Oh, God knows.
Anyway.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Okay,
but this isn't a All Creatures Great and Small podcast. This is a podcast about British horror. We may, if we run out of things to watch, we may. Yeah. Was there a Halloween special of
I really already think that's probably a better idea for a podcast than what we're going to do, which is where we talk about British TV shows if they had been horror, if there was a horror crossover. Yeah. So the All Creatures Great and Small, where the sheep gives birth to a chimera of, say, a lamb and a gorilla or something like that.
Yeah, and all creatures they're talking about are the creatures in the pit of hell.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That episode of Metal Mickey when Mickey kind of got possessed by Pazuzu and ran amok.
But why are we doing this podcast, John? Because it was your idea.
I was listening to the brilliant a podcast for the curious. It still is about the writings of M.R. James, which I thought which is the first podcast I've ever listened to.
Thanks, John. Me and James did have a podcast for 10 years.
Yeah, I never listened to that. So I've listened very devoutly to the M.R. James one while I've been painting in lockdown. And then the other night, I was watching TV on Talking Pictures very late at night. Lust for a Vampire came on, and it reminded me that the really awful introduction to that film reminded me of the fact that I wanted to do a podcast. And then Helen, my partner, said that you should do it with Ross and James because no one wants to listen to you just talk to yourself about films.
Which she definitely doesn't want to.
Yeah. So here we are, really, I suppose.
Okay, and hopefully, like I said, James and I, we did our own podcast for about 10 years, called Creeping with Armstrong, and
we were well ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Now everyone's got a podcast.
Yeah.
We were.
I think the most famous person to have a podcast was Richard Herring at that point, and now I think Prince Harry's just got his podcast come out today.
Yeah.
So we are,
we were too far ahead of the curve, Ross.
Exactly, and now we're way behind the curve. So probably no one's going to hear this. However,
we'll enjoy doing it.
We enjoy doing it anyway.
That's all that matters.
What are our qualifications for doing this podcast?
Spending too much of our teenage years in bedrooms, watching films late at night and reading poor quality pulp novels.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone listening to this should expect anything other than an insight into our lives.
Yes.
Very loose factual correctness.
Exactly, yeah.
Just is it just going to be our opinion of these things?
Yes, I think people shouldn't. That's one of the things I always get really uptight if I'm listening to a podcast about something I like and they get all the facts wrong. Expect that to happen through this. We have John probably knows a lot more about things like Hammer than we do. I might
have misremembered most of it.
Exactly. So, and if we make any mistakes, please forgive us.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't even bother to tell us because we don't care. There's millions of people out there that know more about us than they know more about us than we know about ourselves. That's very strange. There's millions of people out there that know more about this subject than we do. I think what we're trying to do that's important to us is experience these films together.
Yes, apart.
And that's the alternative name for this podcast, which is Together Apart.
Yeah.
So I think that's the point. The thing that we should point out is that this is just us watching these films and enjoying them. It's not
or not.
Or not, yeah. Hopefully, it's not going to be any kind of what's the word? Not decisive. James, help me out here. Definitive. It's not going to be. It's not going to be a definitive tome on anything really, except our opinions of some shit old films, shit TV, shit books.
Hopefully, us riffing on it may take us to interesting or intriguing places.
Exactly.
Because for this one, this did, and we'll get onto it in due course, this did make me go, I'll do a little bit of research. And I found out something which I thought, I'll tell the guys about this when we get going. So let's wait and see.
So we're going to try and do this every couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes. This fortnight, we are going to be covering Dracula AD 1972 from Hammer Horror.
From 1972.
From 1972, indeed. Unless you was in Germany when it was changed to Dracula AD 1973, because it brought out...
Sticklers for correctness.
Exactly.
Was it really?
Yeah. In the UK, you can rent this or buy it on Amazon Prime or on Apple. And that's what we watched today.
Yesterday, Dracula was the most fearsome being the screen has ever seen. Today, tonight, you could be Dracula's next victim.
Something new, yet as old as time.
Come on, Johnny.
A date with the devil.
Are you ready? He's ready. He's waiting to freak you out. Right out of this world.
Died September the 18th, 1872. 100 years ago to the day.
You who witness it must swear before the name of the devil to keep it secret. Who knows about vampires, for God's sake? My grandfather died fighting a vampire. The most terrible, the most dangerous vampire of all time.
The year is 1972. A leap year in horror. A vintage year for vampires.
Count Dracula!
The time for the masters of horror to meet again in the 20th century.
Come to me, Count Dracula!
No.
I have returned to destroy you.
So let us begin then with Dracula AD 1972.
Can I do the music in the background while he does it?
This was the 7th Hammer film, featuring the titular count and the 6th to star Christopher Lee as Dracula, featuring the return of Peter Cushing as Van Helsing for the first time since The Brides of Dracula in 1960, and this was the first to feature both Lee and Cushing in their respective roles since Dracula in 1958. In 1872, Dracula and his nemesis, Van Helsing, battle on top of a runaway coach. The carriage crashes, and the Count is impaled on one of the wheels, and Van Helsing collapses and dies from his own wounds. A century later, Jessica Van Helsing, descendant of Dracula's old nemesis, attends a black magic ceremony in which Dracula is resurrected and plans to take his revenge on the Van Helsing family and bloodline by turning Jessica into a vampire. So there you go.
Excellent. Well done. Both of you, well done.
That music has been in my head since 1992.
What happened in 1992?
Well, to begin the story at the beginning, Central Television in the late 80s and the early 90s did Friday Night Fright Night, where they would show just Hammer films, I think, in a graveyard slot, if you'll forgive the pun. Like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, obviously for people coming back from the pub or clubs, if you remember pubs and clubs. So this was one of the ones that the original one the very first one that I watched was Scars of Dracula, but I taped all the others, and I think this is probably my favourite out of all of those ones that were shown at that point. So we're talking 30 years ago now, so probably pre-1992 actually.
So how old would you have been then, John?
In 1991, I was 12 and 13.
So this was before you met us then.
Oh, yeah. So what had happened was I bought a book about horror films on a car boot sale by a guy called Dennis Gifford, which I've still got. And that went through all the different Hammer films. So I could tick off on a little list of all the ones that Central had shown. But he was very, very, very derisory about this one. And then at the time I thought this was probably my favourite one. And I think it still is my favourite one, actually. Because it's such a weird mash of, now for us, really kind of... This is weird because when I first watched it, this film probably, bizarrely, would have only been 18 years old.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's like a film from 2002.
Well, yeah,
exactly. And now...
In 2 years' time, it's going to be 50 years old.
Yeah. Wow. So it's like the 70s then, you looked back then and you thought, God, this looks really old. But if you think now, like James said, 2002... Yeah. That doesn't feel like very long ago at all. So it's quite strange to think that time has this weird kind of topsy-turvy thing going on. But yeah, it's.
Well, should we go through the plot?
Yes.
Okay, so it starts off in some incredibly bad day for night photography. I was watching it with my I was going to say girlfriend. I was watching it with my wife.
Yeah.
And he just said, "Is this film just really dark?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's day for night." She says, "So this is night." But it's quite an exciting carriage chase.
Oh, I love the start.
For me, it reminded me of kind of like Bond films in that way that kind of like a Bond film starts with like that pre-credit
exactly,
sequence. First mission, and I thought, oh.
And there was a point where it did look like it was actually them on top of the carriage bombing along.
Yeah. The my notes here are Warner Brothers old logo red. So the version I watched on Amazon has had the old Warner Brothers logo removed.
Yes, it was the new one, wasn't it, with the music?
Yeah. So if you remember the old red one, which was like 3 diagonal blobs.
Yes, the white.
Yeah. Red, white, and black. So the original one was that, and this is what I remember on the VHS version that I recorded, and that started with. So when it started, it had the Dracula. So just to remind you what you're watching.
Your new ringtone?
Yeah. So that's gone now. But the other thing that I've written down is lurid red and great music. So I really liked the. So the music is brilliant at that point.
Yes.
And then obviously you've got the typeface, which is like this lurid red, which is like...
you can't read because it's so over stylized.
Yeah,
I was going to say a gothic font that you now see in bad tattoos, where people commemorate their poor quality offspring.
Maybe I'll get a red tattoo that says London 1872 on my arm, or Hyde Park. I can't remember which it says.
Yeah.
So my next notes are Scars of Dracula, bad continuity. It doesn't carry on from the previous film. So the previous film sees Dennis Waterman horrified to see Dracula struck by lightning and tumble off the top of his castle. and the lady, I think the lady went on to be in Black Beauty as well. So it doesn't continue on from that, but then it does start with some really nice cinematography, really nice direction, but very bad day for night shooting where they're on this, they're whizzing through Hyde Park, which I think is actually Black Park, which is where, if you watch any Hammer film, basically any exterior shot was shot in Black Park. I don't know where Black Park is. It's somewhere in England.
Yep.
It's in Hertfordshire. And it is. It is. And it's where they filmed a lot of Rise of Skywalker. A lot of the outdoor stuff for Rise of Skywalker. Yeah.
But then there was the... so Van Helsing gets thrown from the top of the carriage. And then the carriage crashes. The horses come away, don't they? Then the carriage crashes. And then somehow... he becomes impaled on the wheel. On the wheel.
It look, although it is Christopher Lee just holding the wheel against himself, isn't it?
Yeah,
brilliant.
And then they keep cutting to someone riding up. It's like a Monty Python sketch. You thought he was going to? Yeah,
he's right behind him. Oh no!
Yeah, he's still coming.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. So then, the wheel is pushed into Dracula, and you feel like. How many different Dracula deaths have they done in order to have to think, oh fuck, what are we going to do this time?
Don't swear, my mother might listen to this.
Pushes the wheel into Dracula. Some very fake looking blood spurts out, and and I was just thinking that because we've recently watched Abbott and Costello meet. Meet, was it Frankenstein or Dracula? One of the ones. And the Lon Chaney Jr. Transformation for Wolfman is so much better than the stop motion sort of fade, but nothing lines up.
Which they were so pleased with, they used twice in this film.
But when he turns into a skeleton, Beck was going, "Where's his fangs gone?" The skeleton of Dracula had better teeth. First of all, he didn't have the hideous sort of mishmash of bottom row teeth that Christopher Lee has got, and he didn't have the fangs either.
He's got teeth like a broken row of gravestones, hasn't he, Christopher Lee? And what I always like is when he disappears and then comes back to life again, his clothes automatically reinvigorate themselves. It's like, where have his clothes gone?
When he did turn up, I was really disappointed they didn't take the opportunity to give him like a 70s threads.
Wow.
More on that when we get there.
Van Helsing dies. But the guy with
his familiar
comes along, scoops up some Dracula dust into
takes his ring.
Yeah, takes his ring, which fits over his gloved hand, but later on also fits over a non-gloved hand. So, but in a handy test tube he had with him, gets some Dracula dust. Takes a bit of the spoke, and then goes along to Van Helsing's funeral. Yeah, in broad daylight. Stands watching and then starts digging a little hole, really close to the other people who are buried.
They're distracted.
Yeah,
their sorrow has distracted them, Ross.
Yeah, and then
when my nan died at 103 at her funeral, at no point was I turning round looking for a vampire's familiar, kind of making a small patch into Broadstone grave. So
with the spoke of a cartwheel.
Yeah. So
I do want to say that at that point I think is beautifully shot, and I really, really, really love the shot where he's leading the horse through the kind of meadow by its little kind of horse lead. And then it pulls focus from a mourner's face, a lady's mourner's face, to him by the fence. I think that looks amazing, but as you say, really, the whole sequence is bollocks.
Why not come back later that night in the dark and do it?
Because while you've got the guy intoning ashes to ashes, we are in something, we are in life, man is born unto woman, and all that, you've got all that bollocks. It does look brilliant. If you think about it, even for a split second, you realise it's nonsense. But then you do have the great jump cut.
Yeah, forget 2001.
Up there with 2001.
Yeah! You have a jump cut to the
forget
Jumbo
the dawn
Jet.
of man.
Yeah.
What we're going to have.
And then they pan down to a load of concrete motorways.
Well, I was about to say, it's a couple of minutes. There was so much going on. I thought, we picked exactly the right thing to start off with. Cue an incredible montage of, shot by cinematographer Dick Bush. Magnificent. Right, of basically the Westway, London's Westway, which would have been newly completed in 1972, featuring like a Patler. John's written it down as well.
They've literally written Westway, traffic, London Steakhouse.
Mine says magnificent and enticing shot.
Was the shot of the steakhouse a pun?
What do you mean?
So for like steaking Dracula?
Oh, I see.
So,
yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
As John was saying, now it's got this weird thing of it's like an amazing period piece.
Yeah,
because it was just like, look how quiet those roads look.
It's absolutely.
There's nobody on that road.
That title sequence is probably one of the most watched sequences of film I've ever watched in my life, because I literally just want to exist within that environment.
Yeah.
I once had a horrible experience driving over 1,000 miles working on a film festival in West Wales, where I had to take the producer of Torchwood back to London in the middle of the night from Aberystwyth, which is a hell of a drive. But when I got to London, he lived right by that main kind of interchange.
Yeah.
And I was driving around there at like 2:00 in the morning going, this is where they filmed Dracula AD 1972. And he was just like, I absolutely love that sequence. So I've written great jump cut, CD and brash music by Mike Vickers of Manfred Mann, which I think the music for this film is absolutely brilliant. But then that sequence is just amazing, because now it's this amazing time capsule of traffic, Westway, going underneath the kind of underpass or whatever you call it. And then the final shot is the London Steakhouse.
The other thing, so it's incredible over that, wow, kind of time capsule montage.
Yeah,
and then I'm keeping one eye on the credits, and then I see and introducing Stone Ground. Oh, hello.
The Stone Ground. Let's hear more from the Stone Ground.
And who are Stone Ground? And I'm immediately enticed.
Yes, I'm pulled in.
And I didn't have to wait very long, because it then goes into the craziest opening scene ever.
You not only do you get one full song of Stone Ground, you get two full songs of Stone Ground.
And I did see somewhere on the internet that was supposedly going to be the Faces.
Yes.
Really?
And then it was the Stone Ground. So we could have had Rod the Mod and Ronnie Lane and Ron Wood as well, which would have just been absolutely chef's kiss. I'm doing a chef's kiss. But unfortunately, no. So what I've written for the next scene is party, dreary, smiling copper, 60s, 2 question marks. I think at this point, the film, which is set in 1972, is trying really hard to be 1968.
Yes.
And all they do throughout the entire film is go, you want to call a fuzz? You can't bring the fuzz. You can't go to the fuzz. You want to call the cops, Jessica? And it's like, why are they all
kick planks?
Why are they all so scared of the police? Because none of them are doing anything illegal.
Exactly.
And also, when they do call, when the police are called on them, 8 coppers turn up. We've got some ruffians and delinquents at our well-to-do party.
Yeah, we've got people
every
dancing.
on-duty policeman in London.
But I do like that sequence.
I just felt sorry for those girls having to dance on the piano, because you know, it was really long watching it. But you know they would have been filming that for so many times. They would have been so knackered.
So my notes just says 70s core and hot pants.
Yeah,
which I felt was
that's what it is, isn't it? It's like, I don't know how deliberate the attempt is to have the kind of jump from the old Hammer style, which is the stagecoach and the whatever, straight into this kind of. But the thing is, they've so wildly missed the mark of the 70s that it just looks absurd now.
Yeah. So we got this is where we meet our characters, which I forgot all of their names apart from someone whose name is very reminiscent of the word Dracula backwards, but more of that later.
Well, I wrote down Jess, good, Joe, annoying, Bob, ugly, bad hair.
Okay.
So those are some of our characters.
So does that include the one who's dressed as a monk?
Joe is the one dressed as a monk. Okay. Why he's dressed as a monk, I don't know.
And where he goes,
never established.
He just disappears as a character later on. So we got a guy dressed as a monk. We've got the boyfriend of Stephanie Beecham. We got Stephanie Beecham, who is Van Helsing's granddaughter, who was going to be his daughter, but apparently the death of Peter Cushing's wife aged him so much that they had to make it so it was his granddaughter rather than his daughter.
Wow.
Helen, during the making of Blood from the Mummy's Tomb.
Ah, there we go. So we do know some stuff, guys.
He was replaced by a man with a beard whose name I can never remember. It might be not Anton.
Dubek?
yeah.
Anton Rogers from
May to December.
Freshfields.
I'll have to look it up now. Go on, carry on with whatever.
What's the name of the familiar in this?
Johnny Alucard.
Yeah, Johnny.
Yes, Johnny Alucard.
Johnny Alucard, who I thought actually looked quite cool, and I would imagine it's sort of character which would be better played by Malcolm McDowell.
What I have written here, Ross, is he's like a proto-Alex from Clockwork Orange. From the same year.
Something else you're going to like even more is that I've just looked at Blood from, as in the Mummy's Tomb, and the suggestions are blood from anus.
Yes.
Blood from back passage, blood from rectum. None of these are canonical Hammer horror films.
But John, I think we should make blood from anus.
That could be a spin-off from our
That's what we should have called the podcast.
It's probably an anagram of something.
Yeah.
Hang on. But from the Mummy's
Don't get
Tomb.
Peter Cushing to work it out. It'd take an ages.
And he's obviously never seen one of the Universal horror films. Well, they also have a character called Alucard.
Yeah, or any episode of Doctor Who with a master in it.
Yeah. So it's Andrew Keir. So in Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, Peter Cushing was replaced by Andrew Keir, and then Seth Holt, who was directing it, died of a heart attack and had to be replaced. So everyone was saying it was the curse of the mummy's curse had cursed the film.
Yeah, our protagonists are kind of gate crashing this party, but the weirdest thing about it is it's obviously like very well to do, and it's run by someone that I've just written, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Whose party it is, who's called Charles.
I invited the Stone Ground.
And yes, I only invited the Stone Ground mother. And it's like, well, what sort of party is this? Bearing in mind, it just looks like a load of brigadiers and baronets at this party, and it's like, hey, yeah, let's get Stone Ground. This will go down well.
It looks a bit like the end of Carry On Up the Khyber when they're all sat having the meal and being bombed.
Yes.
You can imagine the Stone Ground are bombing them.
That's true. And also, my last point on this is that the magnificentness of the drummer of Stone Ground is wearing a Kaiser cement cap.
Yes.
Which just leapt out at me. I was like, hipsters today would be all over that, wouldn't they?
Oh, that's my band.
Kaiser cement.
Kaiser cement.
After that, we found out that these young kind of hipsters, as it were, these young hip cats, they're looking for a new buzz, because they said every time that they keep crashing these parties, and then they have to escape before, as John says, the fuzz turn up, and and arrest them. And there's so many kind of like allusions to drugs, which they obviously couldn't make. But there's one mention of doing acid at one point.
But they go out and say specifically they're not taking acid.
We're not doing drugs.
Yeah.
I suppose to avoid an X rating, I'm guessing at the time.
Yeah, maybe,
but then,
yeah.
so with that, yes, Johnny Alucard says, "Hey, you kids, do you want to see something really dark? Do you want to have a bacchanalia with the Prince of Darkness and all the rest of it?" And they're like, "Hey, wow, I don't know about all that, Daddy-O," and what have you. And however, they're kind of won over by him. And they say, "Okay, so we're going to have a black," and he says, "Let's have a black mass and all of that sort of jazz," which is what I've written down: black mass, and that kind of jazz.
This scene takes place in the Cavern, which is their coffee bar, which to my mind looks exactly like Scaramanga's Hall of Mirrors in The Man with the Golden Gun. So I did expect at any point someone dressed as a Chicago gangster in the 1950s to come out and shoot Roger Moore. And then a little dwarf man to come out with a suitcase.
Arrives.
I was going... made me think of Clockwork Orange and the milk bars from there as well.
Yeah, once again. 1971 again.
So they then Stephanie Beecham goes back home, and then we meet Peter Cushing, who is the descendant of the original Van Helsing. When was it first established in movies that people's descendants will look exactly the same as...
It's good though, isn't it?
As the people they were descended from.
It helps you understand what's happening, doesn't it?
And we find out that he got a lovely drawing of Dracula up on his wall.
And a painting of himself.
Yes, hang fire on that, because when we see in the next scene where we see Alucard going into his amazing Chelsea residence, I'll say this for the dark side and demon worship. Did I forget you a nice place to live? His flat is amazing, just absolutely awesome.
Flat. Yeah. It's just the nicest flat. He's also driving a Triumph Stag, which is just like an amazing car. He turns up and he's got a lovely etching of Dracula on his wall.
Exactly, which is exactly the same one. They're obviously so pleased with this in the production team, weren't they? It's like, Van Helsing needs to have exactly the same etching. How did Johnny Alucard ever explain that etching? Oh, that's a rather interesting kind of etching shrine you've got in the corner, there. Yeah, swell. Funny you should mention it.
And a coughing coffee table.
Yeah. I have noted later on where on earth you get an etching of Dracula from, because they've both got them.
Dracula fan club.
I have noted at this point that Van Helsing looks very well dressed, but he's looking old, I think, in this Peter Cushing, isn't he? Very thin. But it does have the feel of like a Sherlock Holmesian kind of vibe, where he's living. He's obviously got like a Mrs. Hudson type character that we see later, and he's got this big library of all these occult kind of books and stuff. And Stephanie Beecham refers to it as a mausoleum, which I think is a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like a lovely house. I would,
It looks very much like the house I can see you in there now, John.
Yeah. We're surrounded by my books of the occult.
Yes. But I did notice
etchings of Dracula.
There was a book about Dracula which had a yellow cover, which the original first edition of Dracula had a yellow cover, because yellow was seen as one of the kind of dangerous colours, wasn't it? Yeah, so she picks out a book about the Black Mass, has a little leap through, puts her feet up on the desk, which was very disrespectful, and I sort of like cringed when I saw that.
I thought it was rude as well.
That's how middle-aged we all are now.
Yeah.
Would
you do that in a library?
That's for me as a teacher. Get your feet off the table now. Now.
Would you do that at home?
But then Van Helsing comes in and warns her off of doing any of such nonsense, and says how dangerous it could be.
And then she ignores him.
And this is the point where we had quite a long discussion about, was she wearing a wig? And we thought that maybe she had a short wig over the top of long hair.
Yeah, I thought it looked like a wig. It was quite a popular haircut at the time, but I thought that looked like a wig all the way through the film. The main female character in Deathline, which was made in the same year, which is another film we should review, has also got almost exactly the same hairstyle, which is quite weird. It's like a kind of suede head kind of feather cut thing for like skinhead girlfriend 1972 kind of vibe. But I think it is a wig in this case. Yeah, what her actual real hair is like, I don't know. Or are you meant to think that she would just wear a wig and no one's bothered? Because when she's in bed later on, her hair looks quite normal, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
This is something we need to explore in more. Yeah,
maybe our nascent listener group. Should anyone want to listen?
Did people wear wigs in the 70s?
Yeah, my mum had a wig, which in the house, which I used to wear from time to time.
Wait, whoa. Well, back that one up there, Ross.
Yeah.
You zip past that.
When I used to make
quick.
my Pink Panther costume, which was basically a pair of tights on my legs, cut out the gusset and put my head through that, and then put my arms through the other tights, and then dance in front of a mirror in the hall to the music from the Pink Panther.
This sounds like a scene they cut out of Silence of the Lambs, mate.
Yeah. And this is just last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what we do every Christmas.
So the next scene, we move to St. Bartolph's. I think it's Bartolph's or Botolph.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Bartolph.
Which is down by the embankment. I'm doing inverted commas here. I think the shot of the church at that point looks amazing. It's got a lovely kind of orange nighttime sky, and the church itself looks really nice, kind of blues and greens. I do think Alan Gibson, who directed this, and the aforementioned Dick Bush, who was the cinematographer, did a really cracking job on this film, because it's the best looking, it might be the best looking Hammer horror of the 70s, because a lot of them looked shit. Like, they didn't give a shit.
I partially agree with you, John. So there are a couple, and I've written that down. Like the kind of exterior shots, totally agree. But when they go into in the next scene at the moment, where they kind of summon Dracula, it's lit in the most non-spooky way imaginable. There's like a bright light,
a few strip lights. Put the big lights on.
Lights on. And I did think that's where they dropped the ball. I did think any real kind of atmospheric. But then later on, when they go into the church and Dracula's in there, it is properly lit.
It looked really good, yeah.
Did they just forget? Did they just, was that...
This is one of the first examples of people kicking planks to get in through a fence.
They love that, don't they, in this film?
We just need...
It's a recurring trope.
Yeah, we definitely need to see people checking every plank along there to get into there. But they get the reel-to-reel on, and they play track from a music group called White Noise. Is that right, John?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't got a clue.
Yeah, so it's one of the guys...
Says at the end, yeah.
So one of the guys from Radiophonic Workshop had produced this album called White Noise. And the track,
oh, no way!
Yeah, and I've been listening to it today. Most of the tracks are sounds of people having sex being sped up and slowed down.
Brilliant. I have written where Christopher Neame, who's Johnny Alucard, says, "Dig the music, kids." Which is the worst line in the whole film. Dig the music, kids. But then I've written Moby Dick meets the Radiophonic Workshop, which is John Bonham, as in John Henry Bonham, playing Moby Dick, meets the Radiophonic Workshop, which is basically what the soundtrack is, isn't it?
So the track they play is called An Electric Storm by White Noise. So you can get the album on Apple Music.
They are all huge into it. They kind of all freak out.
They seem to, it escalates just so quickly, doesn't it? It's a case of like, we don't see them take any music. They don't drink anything. They don't take any drugs. But that track just freaks them out, man. They're digging it.
Yeah.
I've written psychedelic hammer.
Yeah.
And then the words, when Dracula arrives, stratospheric dry ice budget.
We've missed a sequence where when they're going into the church, they realise that there's a Van Helsing grave there.
Oh, yes.
Which then really annoys Bob, who I've written perv by Bob. Because he's like, time for a bit of loving or something like that with Jessica.
He tried to shag her on the 2CV.
Yeah.
Oh, we also missed the scene where it's in the 2CV goes through a car wash.
Car
wash. I love the car wash.
They debate
scene.
the merits.
Yeah.
They debate the merits of attending a black mass.
Yeah.
In a car wash.
So you don't see Grace Jones murder Patrick McNee in the same car wash, but it's a similar vibe.
There's so much of people talking about maybe going to do something in this film.
Yeah, that's good. So they go in. So you see the guy Joe scares them wearing a rubber mask. So I've written Joe prick in mask.
But he sings a bit of Mungo Jerry as he goes into the church.
Yeah, I said that. Joe hums in the summertime as he's going into the church. And then as they go in, they don't seem to notice or question why the altar has a massive sheet over it which says D
on it, yeah. Which Johnny Ackland was up all night embroidering.
Yeah.
James, did you go and see Mungo Jerry?
No. He lives very, very close to me. I can point out he used to anyway. This was a good few years ago now.
He's passed over now, hasn't he?
No, I think he's still with us, Ray Dorset.
No. I'm sure Mungo Jerry's passed over, James. Sorry to tell you.
I think Ray's still out and about, and his dog, Boogie. That's what his dog was called. Because a friend of mine, who I remain nameless, just because his mum used to walk their kind of dog at the same time, and kind of built up a sort of a fledgling friendship. And this was round about the time that Shaggy had covered in the summertime, and she found out that he didn't mind the cover version because he approved of the money, but he didn't like the fact that they changed the lyrics.
Oh.
So, I had like a Mungo Jerry hotline for a while.
And wasn't it true that Mungo Jerry played Summertime 3 times every time he did a gig down in Dorset?
Oh, sure, cool. But that's like Deep Purple doing Smoke on the Water, isn't it? Like, they open with it, they finish with it, and they encore with it.
Ray Dorset is still alive. I stand corrected. But does he live in Dorset?
Yes, he does. Yes.
So Ray Dorset lives in Dorset.
In Dorset, yes.
That's brilliant. If you're named after a county, you have to live in the county you're named after. If your name is Tim Somerset, you have to live in Somerset.
Brian Kent.
Bad Trip Man, Jessica.
Yeah.
I've written, it goes on a bit. Blood Sacrifice. Caroline Munro fancies it. Heavy breathing. And it's nice because it's shot through the flame. There's quite an interesting shot where the shot of the sacrifice is shot through a quivering flame, which otherwise, for me, brings to life quite a boring sequence. She's the Navy rum girl, and she's in a Roger Moore as well. I can't think which one.
Is it Moonraker?
It's either Moonraker or The Spy Who Loved Me. I can't remember. Right. It's a late 70s one.
But I also said to Beck at this point that she was incredibly good looking. I said, it's great watching these films because these people are naturally good looking. There's no work done on any of these people. These are actually what they look. And I said to her, I've got a thing about women from the 70s. They just look great.
Well, they all look much better, except their teeth quite often look horrific. So the next shot then goes to outside to where Dracula has been buried for exactly 100
years.
But the piece of the wheel is still stuck in the ground now. No one the gardener hasn't come along and thought, what's that bit of wheel doing? What's that doing stuck in that grave there? Who's left out there? That looks like it's been there for almost exactly 100 years. So there's a good effect where the ground looks like it's breathing and there's all the smoke coming out. But then the silly part is that you've got a big wodge of wheel stuck in the ground. And then obviously, so what I've written next is takes nearly 40 minutes for Lee to appear, which is quite interesting. That you're nearly like 2/3 of the film in, or 1/3 of the film in, or whatever, and you haven't seen the main star of the
But did all the kids run away before Dracula turns up?
Yes.
Yes. So, but the girl gets stuck within the circle and cannot leave there. And then Drac comes in. Oh, no, but the kids run away when all the bubbling blood...
comes on her bosom.
The baptism of blood is poured all over her neck.
Yeah.
God
blimey, man! How awful!
But I wish I got invited to these sort of things.
I felt that, like, as I was watching it, and where I feel that they really missed out on the opportunity was, I thought, oh, okay, is this going to be like Dracula in 60s swinging London?
Yeah.
No, he just stays in the church the entire time.
Leaves the church.
He's like a really bad tourist, isn't he? He's like, oh, do you want to come and see the cultural life? No, I'm staying in the hotel and I don't want to eat any of this foreign muck.
It's hardly
Transylvanian blood. That's all I'm interested in.
He must have been on set for like 5 days, if that. Yeah, maximum, and he never leaves that set, does he?
No.
Which is quite interesting. Nope. So the next scene is where they all kind of hang out in the coffee bar and they debate what has happened. Obviously, we've seen Laura, Caroline Munro, die. There's a great line then where Bob says to Jessica, Laura will be there, a bit drained.
Yeah, ba-boom. Yeah. But I thought
I thought was quite nicely set up, actually.
But they're cutting this back and forth with young kids sort of playing on the rubble.
Well, that bit's tremendous.
Yes. I knew you'd love that bit, John.
Yeah.
In fact,
that bit is tremendous. The shot of the kids finding her body is just brilliant. Yeah. How it hasn't been used as an album cover by now, those kids looking down at the body with the cranes behind the blue sky is brilliant. Yeah. I absolutely love it.
For me, the most impactful, the only bit in it which I felt horrific in any way was her face coming out of the rubble.
Oh yeah, dead face. Yeah.
That was the most folk horror. If we're looking at folk horror, that was the most folk horror sequence for me.
Yeah.
That kind of the horror just in kind of in the everyday.
It's a really strong sequence, that is. So then we move on to Marsha Hunt is involved, who was Mick Jagger's girlfriend at the time.
Yes.
The black lady who was in Hair as well.
Yeah.
So she's dispatched.
But before that, they dispatch her, how does he kind of our villain, our familiar? How does he entice her? I've just written the words in capitals. Jazz spectacular at the Albert Hall,
which unfortunately we don't see on screen.
No.
Which is that is a shame. That is a shame. It was in the original scripts. But jazz spectacular at the Albert Hall, and then when she's like, "Oh, yes!"
Ross and I once went to a jazz spectacular at the Albert Hall, didn't we, Cleves?
Yeah, the dress rehearsal for the Doctor Who at the proms, which I clapped my hands so much when Matt Smith turned up. I felt like I couldn't feel them for a week.
That he bled.
Yeah,
he was clapping blood.
So exciting.
We went to the pub beforehand to eat, and Cleaver ate a massive bowl of mussels, and I thought we were walking so fast then to the Royal Albert Hall that I thought they were going to revisit us at some point. It was so hot. I had like a bowl of chips. Cleaver's like, I'm going to have mussels. I had like a churn full of mussels.
But this is where
Why did you go for the seafood option, Ross?
Yeah, I just love it. And this is where we
I just love it.
That's when we started our Doctor Who podcast, which we did 2 episodes of, which John has got no memory at all of ever doing.
I don't remember doing anything about it at all.
No, so if I can find the files, I might put it on our Patreon website.
That's a good idea.
So people, if people want to become a patron of ours on patreon.com/ General Witchfinders.
Well done.
I may, if I can find it, put our Doctor Who podcast episodes up on there.
Excellent. So at this point, the police are introduced.
Oh, with an amazing fur line.
And I've written, you don't see detectives in coats like that anymore.
So Michael Coles, who is in Doctor Who and the Daleks, as one of the Thals, I think, he comes in. He looks like the Rolling Stones in 1966, basically, doesn't he?
He does!
He's got an amazing suit on. When the Rolling Stones for about a year looked like kind of gangstery look. And they had like fur coats and stuff. Brian Jones had like the white fedora and stuff. He comes in, and then I think the film turns, and the dialogue gets better. He's more believable. Peter Cushing is more believable, and I think that's what kind of salvages the film. Is that they are much more. Don Houghton, the writer, who I'm sure we will discuss later, wrote Doctor Who and created Take the High Road.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think at this point he's much more comfortable writing for policemen and vampire hunters.
Old people.
Yeah, I said to Hal earlier, like, if I had to write something with dialogue now for young kids of 18 living in London, like, my dialogue would be as bad as this guy's dialogue for, like, swinging London. It's basically, it's like the Beano does dialogue for kids, isn't it? It's like, yeah, cool, daddy-o.
With the police. Yeah. I was sure that the other policeman, like on the vampire side,
he's sinister.
He's
very sinister. Yeah.
There was a point where he wanted to delay them going to pick up the kids. There was a point where they kept cutting to realize thing, and I felt like was that a storyline which was sort of cut out of it because
edited out? I don't know. I find him quite interesting. He's an interesting looking guy.
He looked a bit like
glasses... Tinker. Yeah, a little bit. His glasses are quite interesting, but I googled him, and he was an actor, but not in much stuff that is memorable.
Now we're used to things having like a kind of expanded universe and things such as that. But there's that moment when he talks about, Van Helsing, and he says, well, we've worked with him before. And I was like, okay, and that was cool, and that was the bit I thought, and then I did genuinely think, had these guys turned up in an earlier or in another?
That character's used again in another film, isn't he, John?
Yeah.
Well, he's in which we should do. He's in Satanic Rites of Dracula as well.
There you go. Which is the next I thought that was cool.
Which is, I think, is absolutely brilliant, and is probably the most derided of all the Hammer Dracula films.
Okay, well, maybe we'll come to that later on.
Yeah.
What happens next?
I've written shot of the stag come in for a bite with inverted commas, and then I've written Cushing's hair is superb.
Yes. However, we felt what would it look like when it's down? Because it's so long.
It's very long
and swept back, isn't it?
He looks so heroic. Like, if there is a hero out there, it's Peter Cushing as Van Helsing in a bow tie.
The thing that struck me was we've already made reference to Christopher Lee's teeth, but of course now we've all got good TVs and everything's HD. I noticed I've just written Cushing's nicotine fingers.
Yes, I thought exactly the same thing.
His fingers are really nicotine stained.
Yeah,
really. And I was like, whoa, blimey.
I do want to say that I thought the print I watched was brilliant on Amazon. Which I presume is done for 4K, not 4K,
HD.
Blu-ray and HD. Yeah. Obviously, what I watched in the 1980s and 1990s was taped off the TV, and it was on a 4:3 ratio, Bang & Olufsen, proper, like, what do you call them? Vacuum tube television.
Cathode ray.
Cathode ray, with a top-loading video player.
Love.
You literally, I'm surprised you could see anything, let alone, discernible images.
Yeah.
Took this on my laptop quite closely the other night, and to see all this detail in it, I was really astounded. We're probably, I think we're lucky these days. We're able to see these films better than even at the time.
Yeah, it's like yesterday. I realised that Gail Von Trapp had a scar on his chin, which I'd never noticed before.
Yeah. The new prints of films that are coming out now, particularly Hitchcock's and stuff like that, they're nuts. They're so good compared to like when we were growing up, and you'd see like Star Wars, and it would be panned and scanned, and the top and the sides of the picture would be cut off. And it'd be like, this was shot in Panavision. You can't see a flipping thing.
Saying like you guys have got pages of notes. I've got a few lines. I got here 70s fingernails. And
in HD.
In HD. I just thought fingernails of the 70s had a particular look. Yeah. I can't explain what they are. And also, Robert Webb is Johnny. We felt like...
Yes! I thought that too. Yeah.
Christopher
very
Neame.
much.
He's the baddie in Sharda as well, which is the great unreleased Doctor Who.
Douglas Adams.
Yeah, where he wears a totally silver suit and like a big silver fedora, and he walks around Cambridge.
Yeah, and then
Tom Baker goes, Sharda.
I've got the animated one of that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Sharda. My next note is no police at the church? Question mark.
Yeah.
So they've had a murder there that day. Johnny Alucard goes there with Marsha Hunt, kicks all the planks again, takes her in there, she gets done off. There is a really, really brilliant wide-angle, kind of almost like fisheye shot of Dracula. And then she is dumped. They have
a bit of an argument about he needs to have the powers in order...
Yes, he's given the power of vampirism, but then the body of Marsha Hunt is dumped.
Rolled into a river.
The start of the film takes place with the bridge. It's exactly the same bridge. So it's like...
I always feel sorry for actresses when they're rolled in, have to go in water. It often happens.
Yeah. Don't worry, darling. It'll be the start to your career.
I imagine it'd be like when we made a film. All the things we wrote in our script, you guys just refused to do. James, you need to be naked. I'm not going to do that.
You wanted me to run down a road naked, Rob? In Cardiff?
Yeah.
In a major metropolitan city?
John, you need to run after this car. I'm not going to do it.
I'm not running.
I don't have much, but I still have a dignity.
So yeah, basically Marsha Hunt is dumped where we've already seen the stagecoach at the start. I don't know if you're meant to pick up on that or not. I don't know if it's got any point in the plot. But then the next bit is Johnny Alucard is turned into what he wants to be all along, which is a vampire. And then there's a sequence where he attacks a woman. Well, you don't see him attack the woman.
A laundrette.
But you see a laundrette. And you see him in his stag. That, for me, is the quintessence of the whole film.
Yeah,
it's very 70s, isn't it? It's very kitchen sink.
70s. It's really atmospheric. She's in the laundrette. The music's coming out of his car. He opens the door of his car. He's got vampire teeth.
Would you think this would be better? Would you think this film would be better? If
it couldn't be better.
If Dracula wasn't in it. Because it felt to me... Some of these bits, like that bit you was talking about there, there's a bit later on where they confront the boyfriend, takes Stephanie Beacham back to the club and then surprises her that he's a vampire as well. And also,
there's a lot going on there. These days, if they redid it today, the potential there, because obviously we'll talk about this at the end when we talk about the Highgate vampire, but the whole kind of dark side to the age of Aquarius, the whole kind of having people saying into cults, and some people going, are vampires real? You could play on that really, really well, but obviously they've gone, right, 90 minutes, and we've got to have 15 minutes of Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. They smashed the 90 minutes. There isn't a minute wasted in the film. In fact,
apart from the first 45.
No, but I think it could be like a 2-hour film, and I'd sit and watch it. It really reminds me of. It really reminds me of Fright Night, which the 1985 Fright Night with what's his name, Roddy McDowall. In that it's like this thing. It's modern day, and vampires don't exist in the modern day, and it's all that kind of thing of like, it's making people believe what is unbelievable, and that is the bit that it kind of turns on for me, and that's what I like about this laundrette scene where you've got this woman in the laundrette and then you've got this handsome vampire in a triumph stag, and I really like that kind of rub, and that rub against modern life works really well, whereas in other parts of the film it's just a bit it's fun to watch, but it is a bit lame, and that's the problem.
Agreed.
So then we have the police go to the Van Housen household to inform the Stephanie Beacham that the first girl has been killed and to get some more information.
Great scene.
Yeah, and then they recommend that Van Housen gives his granddaughter a sleeping tablet to put her to sleep.
That bit was mental. Yeah. While he's dressed as Keith Richards in 1966. Just give her a sleeping pill.
And then she has
should be fine.
A Pallenberg.
So she has like a night, a sweaty nightmare whilst the Johnny Atkins has been turned into a vampire. Where then her grandfather comes up and does quite a lot of groping around her breasts in order to put the crucifix
Poor
on her.
Christopher Lee was in mourning, Ross.
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing was in mourning. I'm sorry.
The Christopher Lee was just in mourning for J.R.R. Tolkien.
That scene is quite problematic and it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be in the
There's
film.
a big smile on his face while he's doing it, if you watch.
Stephanie Beacham, mate.
Yeah. She's a very good-looking woman in this. Fair play.
That was the scene where I felt other policeman was potentially going to be a bad guy because he wants to delay them picking up the other people.
He wants to go for a cheese sandwich. He
does.
This is where we lose the character of the monk boy at that point. So it makes me feel like
gone.
Was there a scene where he got killed where he was off?
Deleted scenes.
I think that's weird, and I think that might be down to an edit of scenes shot or maybe not shot, because you have this sequence where suddenly, and it kind of works, where Jessica and Peter Cushing kind of are suddenly on their own, and all of her friends disappear. Whether that's by luck or design, I don't know if that's the case, but it really does work. Because suddenly it's like the film becomes quite claustrophobic, whereas before, they're on the.
There was a group. We're a group. We call ourselves a group.
We're a group now.
Yes, we're not a gang.
You're not a gang. Whereas now it's like Mrs. Hudson or whatever her name is, the housekeeper, and Lorimer Van Helsing and Jessica, and I think that works really well. But I think it needed a scene where Joe says, "I'm going to go and stay with my parents. I've had an awful time," or, whatever. Where you can just, he exits stage left. But
so then Van Helsing, while Stephanie Beecham is recovering from all the drugs which he's given her,
heaving bosoms.
Yeah, he goes to see a policeman in his enormous office full of executive toys.
Yeah, exactly what I have written down, Ross.
Yeah, the Newton's Cradle. It's a great set. I love the set.
Scotland Yard detectives. I'm pleased that on the taxpayers' money, he's got that much time to play with. As you said, a Newton's Cradle, one of those electrical circuits that buzzes in it. He's got at least 3 I spotted. At least 3.
Brilliant.
They have a very long discussion where he keeps saying, "Well, if any of my superiors hear me listen to you about vampires, they think I'm crazy."
Demoted.
Yeah. However, I am going to let you. Could you just let me go and kill the vampire? And don't come until after sunrise. Yeah. And he goes,
okay, fine.
Okay, go on.
We trust you. You've written books.
At that point, for some reason, there is a shot of the embankment, Thames Embankment, looking towards Battersea Power Station with a big fisheye lens that kind of swoops round into the traffic, which is a brilliant shot, and it's really atmospheric. It has no
almost
place
does like
in
a
the film
360
whatsoever.
thing, doesn't it? It's a bit like in It Follows, because they keep doing that shot and it follows.
And the opening 360 of the of the Westway, and also it's great to see Battersea Power Station actually working.
It's like they're saying, "Don't forget, we're still in London." Yeah, it's a lot of smoke coming out, or steam, or whatever it is coming out. Yeah, looks amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing shot. Is a character called Anna comes up and says, "Mr. Van Helsing, I've been looking for you. I've been to see Johnny Alucard. He's so weird."
It's because he breaks into the back of the coffee place. And then he just runs around looking sweaty and like looking at like mannequins in windows and stuff, and the music's like
it's funky.
This is when the film got good for me. This is my favourite point onwards, because it felt like it was very slow, but then it started speeding up at this point.
It's not slow at all. It's really like fast. He goes to find Johnny Alucard to find out where Jessica is, because obviously Jessica at this point has been kidnapped by Bob, who has been vampirized, and Johnny Alucard.
Oh, we've missed the
classic
the anagram.
Right, okay. If you want to extrapolate on that, go ahead.
Okay. Well, there is a moment in which
Johnny Alucard.
we see Peter Cushing, Peter Cushing as Van Helsing, who we're told is an expert, and we've seen has written numerous books on the occult. So he's clearly not been hit with a stupid stick at all. And we see him writing down Alucard on a piece of paper, and then underneath lines coming out, which then just spell Dracula, even though it's just Alucard is just Dracula backwards.
It's not even an anagram.
It's not even an anagram. He doesn't need to draw the lines.
But it does make a really nice logo for Dracula. And they should have...
Oh, that's our T-shirt. It's the first T-shirt, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And then he just drops
this knowledge on Scotland Yard later. Yeah. He says to Detective Murray, "Oh, and by the way, Alucard backwards is Dracula." Bang! Say that one, Dracula. Game over.
So, So the fight sequence.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's my favourite bit.
My favourite sequence of the whole film. Well,
the
which
first one.
fight sequence?
Yeah, the
Because
first
I'm talking
one,
about
yeah.
Johnny
Yes.
Alucard in his flat. So what I really like is you've got this young, lithe, kind of Jagger-esque vampire, and you've got really Grandpa coming in his bow tie,
the cardigan.
is a Harrington Mac and his cardigan. And he's like, Johnny, where is she? And then he throws what looks like a massive black dildo.
It's one of his black mass candles.
Yeah. It's like, he throws a huge black dildo at Johnny Alucard. And then they have this brilliant brawl where Peter Cushing is stabbed. And then he throws a Bible in the coffee table coffin. And then...
I'm working on it.
And then, obviously, the denouement of this whole sequence is Peter Cushing uses a mirror to reflect the sunlight to kind of bash Johnny Alucard into his bathroom, where he goes into his bathroom, pulls the skylight, the room is filled with light, and he falls in the bath, and then he, the old-fashioned vampire cannot cross running water. Is a shower, and then he melts in his bath.
Well, doesn't really melt. He gets a little bit of PVA glue on his
cheek. He's got PVA on his face.
Yeah.
But again, my only thought was not like the, oh my God, I just thought, wow, what a bathroom.
Yeah.
Because of that skylight.
And I felt like we could have set up the skylight at some point earlier in the film, so we knew that was going to happen.
It was coming.
Yeah.
However, it was great.
Amazing.
It was a great film.
The bathroom looked fantastic.
The music is brilliant. The pacing is brilliant. The editing is brilliant. The bit where he goes, "You can rot in hell," as he dies in the shower is brilliant.
In many ways, that's like, we've mentioned the Stones. That is like a companion piece, isn't it? To
performance.
Performance.
It is a bit like performance, actually. Yeah.
With Jagger in the bath.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I absolutely love that bit. It's the best bit of the film. The film finishes there for me, really.
Yeah.
When you see Dracula, you're a bit like, oh, here we bloody go again.
Perfunctory, isn't it? The ending is perfunctory. Stephanie Beacham does nothing these days.
Well, I wouldn't call that nothing, James, in that dress.
Ben Housen goes off to the scene of the murder. No policeman again.
It goes back to the church where there now been two murders. We're not going to put any police around the church.
Look, we've got... Our police officers, our dedicated Metropolitan Police officers, are busy going to people who are just crashing parties without invites. They haven't got time.
8 people at that.
They haven't got time
party.
for murder investigations.
Standing out, there's 2 policemen stood outside the Cavern Club
where they've been dealing pot. That's it.
Where they've been dealing pot and LSD.
Yeah.
Where they've had 2 murders in the church, there's no one there.
Most of that, that's fine. It's done now, isn't it? They're dead.
Yeah.
What else can happen here?
So he digs a hole, puts some stakes in the hole, takes ages covering it up with grass, goes and puts the crucifix round her neck again, tucks it inside her top,
the bosom.
She's in some kind of vampiric stupor at this time. A trance.
Accidentally knocks her bosoms about 3 or 4 times, which wobble quite considerably.
Yeah.
And then waits for the sun to come down.
We don't find out why she's suddenly... we don't find out why or how she's been got to that church, all put in a different dress.
Yeah. Or where Dracula is.
We don't know where Dracula is.
In the daytime. Fine. He disappears.
Yeah.
He says one good line, which I've forgotten, which is about like I commanded armies or something.
So that's you play your brains against mine who have commanded armies of blah 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 blah. That is a line from Dracula the book, and Christopher Lee insisted that was put in the script because otherwise he wouldn't do it because he was too busy doing like films abroad in Spain, getting like $100,000 a film to appear for 5 minutes in a film about like the Marquis de Sade or something like that.
So then they have a slow chase up a spiral staircase.
Yeah, which is quite good, quite atmospheric.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to keep stopping and turning around. And like he's been there for ages, setting up this trap out in the graveyard, and then he runs up the stairs. Why?
He's a maverick thinker, Ross.
Yeah,
that's what Dracula would expect.
And then he stabs him with his silver knife, which doesn't kill him.
No.
He falls off the balcony, which he does in Taste the Blood of Dracula.
Okay, at that point, I was thinking I would probably jump off there onto the dagger to push it in, because it's not that high up. I wouldn't then slowly
get you,
but I
wasn't Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Oh, I jumped from the balcony.
But I'm not a 70-year-old man.
Stab him.
It's that bit's ludicrous. But then he kind of mind melds with Stephanie Beacham to get her to come and pull out the dagger. And then I can't remember what happens. Does he just run outside then? Peter Cushing just runs outside then?
Yeah, and then falls over, uncovers the pit covered in spikes, which is really badly covered. Yeah. Dracula stands staring at it with his hair all messy.
Hair awry.
And then slips and falls in.
Yeah. But no, he throws holy water over him, doesn't he?
Oh, yes, he does, yes.
And that's when he slips. He falls in, and then, surprisingly gory, Peter Cushing hits him with a spade.
To push him through. I thought he was going to chop his head off with the spade at that point.
And then pushes him through, and a big bubble of blood comes out, which I thought was quite surprisingly gory, actually. But and
then we go, rest in peace forever. The end.
Rest in final peace. I will say about this film, there's quite a few... not pointless characters, but characters which kind of just seem to have dead ends, don't they?
Exactly,
where it's like,
yeah.
If you think about this film, like poor Jessica, her boyfriend's been turned into a vampire. Most of her friends have been killed. This is something I'd quite like to see explored in the last 10 minutes of the film. But actually, it just says rest in final peace, and it finishes, which I think is a bit of a shame, really, because you don't see the police. Yeah, you don't see the police officer again. No. And I find that a bit weird.
It all feels like they said, this film needs to be an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll just cut it down.
Yeah. I think that is... some of the inherent weaknesses of the script are where, like I said, maybe films that were written... scenes that were written and weren't used, or edits where scenes were just taken out, like, you know, when all her friends just disappear from the film.
Gone.
It's a bit of a weird feel, but you think, you know, we're looking at this nearly 50 years later. I don't think they were... I remember a quote from Roger Corman saying, I think about something in Fall of the House of Usher, he reused a scene from a film where there's a beam falling that's on fire and it crushes a character, and he basically reused it from one of his other films. And people have picked up on this later, and he's saying, like, I had no idea that in 50 years people were going to be rewatching these films like 10 times a year.
Yeah.
I made it's a B movie. It went out. Once it's gone out, you know, that's it. I thought it would just disappear.
Yeah. People aren't meant to be making podcasts about this.
Is now the time to talk about the Highgate vampire? Right. Okay. So.
Have we all been to Highgate? I've been to Highgate.
Yes, absolutely.
No, apparently you can't get in there anymore without going on a guided tour.
Well, you've got to go on a tour.
Yeah.
You've got to go on a tour. One part you can just walk round. The part that's what you think of as being Highgate Cemetery, you have to go on a tour.
Is that where George Michael was buried?
Oh, I don't know. Karl Marx is there.
Karl Marx is, yeah, for sure.
Lucian Freud is there. Patrick Wymark, the actor, is there. There's loads of people there, but that's the one where you have to go on a tour.
Well, that's our post-COVID meetup then, isn't it?
Okay, well, so as I was watching this, what I thought was, well, there is an allusion made to the Manson family murders. And what I thought was immediately, you know, along with the whole let's update Dracula to swinging 60s London, even though it's now the 1970s, I thought they've gone for the whole dark side of the Age of Aquarius vibe. Now, if you haven't read the excellent, I highly recommend this, by the way, everybody, there's a really great book called Turn Off Your Mind by a guy called Gary Lackland. And it's and the subtitle is The Dark Side to the Age of Aquarius. And it's all about how, you know, for all the peace and love of the 1960s, there was always an undercurrent of darkness. so on and so forth. And so that's what I thought they'd gone for here. But yeah, as I then looked into it and explored it, thanks to our friends on Wikipedia, it says, apparently this film was inspired by the Highgate vampire. Das Vampir. And I said, what's this? I don't know about this. And oh my God, what an absolute treat this is. So, if you wish, here is the story from it. And it says, a group of young people interested in the occult visited the cemetery in the late 1960s, a time when it was being vandalised by intruders. According to a report in the London Evening News of the 2nd November 1968, on the night of Halloween 1968, a graveyard desecration by persons unknown occurred at Tottenham Park Cemetery, so not Highgate. These persons arranged flowers taken from graves in circular patterns with arrows of blooms pointing to a new grave which was uncovered. A coffin was opened and the body inside disturbed.
Defiled.
Bummed.
Their most macabre act was driving an iron stake in the form of a cross through the lid and into the breast of the corpse.
Ooh.
Though the identities and motivations of these responsibles were never ascertained, general consensus at the time linked the desecration to events surrounding the Highgate vampire case. Then, in a letter to the Hampstead and Highgate Express on the 6th of February 1970, David Farrant wrote that when passing the cemetery on 24th of December 1969, he glimpsed a grey figure, which he considered to be supernatural, and asked if others had seen anything similar. On the 13th, several people replied, describing a variety of ghosts said to haunt the cemetery or the adjoining Swains Lane. These ghosts were described as a tall man in a hat, a spectral cyclist, a woman in white, a face glaring through the bars of a gate, a figure wading into a pond, a pale gliding form, bells ringing, and voices calling. Sean Manchester claimed the figure was a vampire, das Vampir, and the media quickly latched on, embellishing the tale with stories of the vampire being the king of vampires, or of practicing black magic. The ensuing publicity was enhanced by a growing rivalry between Farrant and Manchester, each claiming that he could and would expel or destroy the spectre. Manchester declared that he would hold an exorcism on Friday the 13th of March 1970. ITV interviewed Manchester, Farrant, and others who claimed to have seen supernatural figures in the cemetery. These were broadcast on ITV on the early evening of the 13th. Within 2 hours, a mob of hunters, in inverted commas, from all over London and beyond swarmed over gates. I imagine they kicked the fences to find a weak point, and walls into the locked cemetery, despite police efforts to control them. Some months later, on the 1st of August 1970, the charred and headless remains of a woman's body were found not too far from the catacomb. It doesn't say which catacomb. The police suspected that it had been used in black magic. Citation needed. Farrant was found by police in the churchyard beside Highgate Cemetery one night in August, carrying a crucifix and a wooden stake. He was arrested, but when the case came to court, it was dismissed. A few days later, Manchester returned to Highgate Cemetery. He claims that at this time, he and his companions forced open the doors of a family vault, indicated by his psychic helper. He said he lifted the lid off of one coffin, believing it to be mysteriously transferred there from the previous catacomb. He was about to drive a stake through the body it contained when a companion persuaded him to desist. Reluctantly, he shut the coffin, leaving garlic and incense in the vault. And then finally it says, there was more publicity about Farrant and Manchester when rumours spread, here we go guys, that they would meet in a magician's duel on Parliament Hill on Friday, the April the 13th, 1973, which never occurred.
Apparently there was posters put up in the underground for this duel.
Wow!
Inviting people to
this
come.
is what we need. This is what's gone wrong with Brexit Britain. There are not enough magicians' duels taking place at any point. Farrant was jailed in 1974 for damaging memorials and interfering with dead remains in Highgate Cemetery. Yeah, exactly that. Vandalism and desecration, which he insisted had been caused by Satanists, not by him. And then my favourite part, Farrant and Manchester wrote and spoke repeatedly about the Highgate vampire, each stressing his own role to the exclusion of the other. Each attempted to control the narrative around the Highgate vampire, resulting in ongoing animosity and rivalry between the two. their feud continued for decades, marked by insults and vindictiveness until Farron's death in April 2019.
No way!
Wow, but what a tale! What a story!
It brings to mind the rivalry between Colin Fry and Derek Acorah, of course. two of the great supernatural minds of the 20th and 21st centuries.
And maybe we're going to hear more about that on upcoming podcasts.
Hopefully we are, yeah.
Okay, so back to Dracula AD 1972. So, would we recommend this film, guys?
Yes. To the right person. I wouldn't,
in the right mood.
Yeah.
Personally, yeah. I preferred the last third.
The final act.
The final act. I felt the beginning, the first two acts, just a little. They dragged a little bit for me, and there wasn't enough of Dracula, or vampiric going on. But I thought that the final act was brilliant, and I love. There was particularly the fight between Van Helsing and Aguilard. I thought that
awesome.
That was great, and I would watch that again on YouTube. Well, I paid the money to buy it now, so I could.
You went for buy rather than rent, did you?
Maybe Satanic Rites of Dracula is for you, Cleves. Have you ever seen Satanic Rites of Dracula?
No, not.
Well,
I know I've watched Hammer before, but I've got no memory of any.
I think you're going to be in luck, guys, because this is the film for you. If you can imagine Hell's Angels, James Bond, Doctor Who, and the Master meets Van Helsing and Dracula, then you're in for a treat.
I think we should score the film out of 5.
Out of 5, ooh, it's an easy 4 to 4.5 out of 5 for me.
So because I haven't got a benchmark, I'm gonna give this a 2. At this point,
I as a historical piece,
controversial.
It was worth it just to see the 1970s, London, 70s London.
So what score are you going to give it, James? Out of 5? The 2. So we got 2, 2, and a 4.5.
Wow, I'm surprised at that, guys. I thought you'd be more effusive.
Well, we'll see. We may have to come back and revisit if all the other films are worse than this. We might have.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot worse than this.
So now we're going to do a segment which I call Something Horrific. So I want us all to bring something we've watched, seen, read, or listened to since the last episode, which we could recommend to our audience.
So since the last episode, which
doesn't exist.
So while I've been doing this podcast, right, hang on.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what I'm recommending while you do that. So I'm recommending Ghosts on BBC Two, which I think is on BBC. I don't know because I watch iPlayer.
BBC One now, Ross.
It's on BBC One, please.
Yeah, so from the cast of Horrible Histories and the other thing they did on Sky One, which I don't think anyone saw. It's basically a sitcom with a load of ghosts in a haunted manor, and it's just very funny, very sweet, and very poignant, and I love it. And it's great, even though it's on past the watershed, and there's maybe 1 or 2 episodes of Catch the Other Kids. It's something which my children, who are 5 and 8, enjoy just as much as I do.
It features well-known James lookalike. There are, of course, many. Simon Farnaby.
Yes, as the MP who
the Tory MP
who died with his trousers off.
Randall-alike.
Yeah,
Randall-alike. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Love it. And the Christmas special made me cry, so it's very good.
Nice.
Well, that's all you can want from entertainment, Cleves, isn't it?
Just want to be made to cry.
James, what's yours? Because I don't know how I'm going to find
mine. I think I apologise for this, but John, I think I might have seen you mention it at some point on social media. Apologies if not, but it feels like it. But this book, Ghostland.
Oh, okay. Edward Parnell, yeah.
Yes. Right. Okay. So Edward Parnell. Basically, it's him. It's part memoir, talking about his own life, but he's just a couple of years older than us, so it has a lot of the same cultural reference points. And basically, it's just his tour of Britain, looking at kind of folk horror around the British Isles. And just as I flicked through, as you do when you first get a new book, straight away he's visited near to me and to Ross too, Badbury Rings. So
nice.
for example, oh wow, I've been there and what have you. So bearing in mind the cover features, the TV version of Whistle and I'll Come, the original Wicker Man, and also Ring of Dark Water, the notorious kind of information film from the 1970s. I thought, well, I'm in the right territory here. So I've just started that because. Good, yeah, I'm thoroughly
really
enjoying it.
Highly
recommend it for everyone if you're into or getting interested like we are in kind of folk horror. That's my recommendation.
Mine was going to be a website thing, which I'd left the page open, but I can't find it now. So I will talk about the Signalman, the 1976 ghost story for Christmas, which was on BBC in 1976 at Christmas. I've now got it on DVD, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's an hour long. It's Denham Elliott. It's another man who plays the other man in it. It's very spooky. It's beautifully shot. The sound really ahead of its time with like the sound design, production design, and stuff. And it basically, besides the fact, I won't give the ending away, but besides the fact of the ending, it shows the kind of life that I would like to have, and that is the life of the signalman, and that's a simple life. Working signals for steam trains going backwards and forwards across England in Victorian times. So there's no social media, there's no Twitter, there's no COVID, no Brexit.
But ghosts. Yes, very good.
Yeah, and that's well worth watching. And I think we should review that at some point, because I think if you two haven't seen it, I think you'd really like, particularly Denham Elliott in it.
Well, brilliant. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. So in the next episode, which will be probably in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be covering The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957, another Hammer horror. So that's available to stream and rent on Amazon in the UK. So hopefully you could watch along as well. So that's the end of our podcast for today. Just want to say goodbye. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe. So I always think it's weird when people ask people to subscribe when they're already listening to it on some kind of podcast thing. So tell your friends to subscribe. Yeah, tell your friends because you know where it is because you're listening to it anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, press the subscribe button and get your friends to subscribe. Also, we've got a Patreon, which if we get people to go on Patreon, we're definitely going to do more of these. So go on there. It's patreon.com/General Witchfinders. Just go to generalwitchfinders.com and there's loads of other stuff on there, including a shop where some of the illustrations which John and I are doing to accompany these films have been put onto some products which we will get a very, 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 very small amount of money for if you buy anything.
Yeah, but we're hoping to do a series of bins with Peter Cushing on. I'm going to do...
They're not bins, they're they're water mugs, but also you can get Peter Cushing cushion on there.
I thought it was a bin.
It's not a bin, it's a water cup. It's a water.
All right.
Yeah.
A water cup as opposed to...
Yeah, a cup which you don't have water in. But you can get a Peter Cushing cushion, so it's worth getting it for that.
Peter Cushing's cushion.
Yeah. But thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
See you soon, everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye. Bye. Bye.
You have been listening to The General Witchfinders. Support the show and continue the conversation at patreon.com/General Witchfinders. Subscribe and spread the word at generalwitchfinders.com. Farewell, and don't have nightmares.